Bob Ferguson has graciously sent one of his legislators. This is Yasim Trudeau, who serves as the Legislative Director and Tribal Liaison for External Affairs at the Washington State Office of the Attorney General. She's a licensed attorney and a proud graduate of Seattle University School of Law. Prior to her current role, she worked as staff counsel to the Washington State Senate Democratic Caucus, where she worked on capital budget. Oh, she's a saint, too. She worked on trade, economic development, agriculture, and water. She's also the former legislative aide to Washington State Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal during her time at the state legislature. Did I pronounce that right? Yes. Okay. During law school, she was a legal extern. I've never heard of that one. When I read that, I've heard of interns, but not externs, so maybe she'll explain that to us. With the Honorable Justice Mary Yu, who's just fantastic, during her final months in King County Superior Court, a law clerk with the U.S. Attorney Office, and a policy fellow at the Polaris Project, an organization that takes a comprehensive approach to human trafficking based in Washington, D.C. Currently, Yasim lives in Tacoma with her husband, Nathan, and their new baby. She loves to read, paint, and spend time with her family. We are so lucky to have Yasim with us. Thank you so much.
As was mentioned earlier, my name is Yasim Trudeau, and I serve as the Legislative Director for Bob Ferguson. I think we're all here because we're shocked, alarmed, angry, and confused as we make our way through the recent efforts by the Trump administration and various states across the country to degrade and erase the right to family planning, healthcare access, and reproductive justice. So I really thank you all for allowing me to be in this space with you. It really is an honor. So I'll share, I never know how much to share about my personal life, but my personal life is what inspires me to do policy work. And so I thought in this forum I would share something with you about why I'm so passionate, braving the 2 hours plus traffic to get here, but totally worth it. This place is gorgeous. This is really a deeply personal issue for me. For most of my life, my family and I were well below the national poverty line and had no health insurance. Planned Parenthood provided me, my mother, my aunt, access to low to no cost birth control. And later, when I was a 19-year-old waitress making my way through college, I ended up utilizing the right to make choices over my own body, and it changed the trajectory of my life. I honestly believe that had my choices been taken from me, the way that the administration is trying to take the choices away from other young women, I wouldn't be here talking to all of you. But I am, and today I'm the parent of a beautiful baby boy that I chose to have. I want others to have the same opportunity to choose what is best for them, as does our Attorney General. So despite the decisions that other state legislatures and the federal government are making, as was mentioned earlier, I'm really proud that Washington is standing strong. We understand the impact not only on our rights, but also on our health. Title X, research from our office shows that Title X allows 90,000 plus low-income people to access birth control, cancer screenings, and testing for HIV. And as was mentioned earlier as well, about 6 months ago, our own Attorney General announced that Washington would be filing a lawsuit in the Eastern District of Washington against the administration for their plans to remove federal funding from Title X family planning services, and specifically family planning health providers who use non-Title X funds to provide abortion services or refer. I won't go too much into the rule, but I want to talk a little bit about the landscape that we're working with and sort of what happens in this state and other states should that injunction not continue. We did have an injunction set at the trial court level, but then the Court of Appeals reversed that, and so that's the decision that we're waiting to happen. And on September 23rd, we're set for oral arguments. So if you guys want to look that up and pay attention to what our attorneys are saying and what the attorneys on the other side are saying, I really encourage you to watch that. In addition, Governor Inslee recently declared that Washington State will provide the funding necessary for Planned Parenthood and other impacted healthcare providers to continue to provide the services they would without the proposed rule change. So as mentioned earlier as well, Secretary of Health John Wiesman and the Department of Health said there is existing family planning money to cover the loss, but only through the middle of March. So then state legislators will be required to fill the gap. And that's where you all come in. We will want to make sure to put pressure on them for the needed funding in the supplemental budget this year to ensure that that access remains for the people that are seeking this type of health care. So we need to let state legislators know here in Washington how those decisions impact you, because you all are their constituents. You all have friends who are constituents in various districts, and they really, really need to hear from you individually, collectively. So what happens if Roe v. Wade is overturned? So there are 3 categories that states fall into if Roe v. Wade is overturned. There's what's called trigger law states, states with explicit constitutional protections, and middle ground states. Trigger law states, I'll go into first, and then I'll sort of go in the next 2 categories, and then I'll let you know where Washington falls in that conversation. So overturning Roe v. Wade would theoretically make abortion illegal in states with trigger laws. These are laws which lie in wait, only coming into effect after another law or ruling is amended or overturned. Limited exceptions may be made, for example, to save the life of the mother, but in all other cases, doctors could face up to 10 years in prison and a fine of $100,000 for providing an abortion. Punishment would apply to the person providing the abortion, not the woman having it. The states with trigger laws are Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So those are the states to watch. Constitutional legal protections, the second category. At the opposite end of the scale, there are states like California where inhabitants are deemed to have the least risk of losing abortion services in the event that Roe v. Wade is overturned. Because in California, abortion is protected by the state constitution separate from the federal constitutional rights. So abortion would continue to be protected in those states even if Roe fell. Montana, Minnesota, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, Alaska, and Florida have similar protections to California. In addition, California has passed laws which strongly protect a woman's right to seek an abortion. Other states with those similar laws but no constitutional protections include Maine, Oregon, Nevada, Connecticut, Maryland, Delaware, and Hawaii. The middle ground states, those are the states that are on the spectrum between trigger law states and the states with constitutional protections. And it states that you would argue would fall somewhere in the middle. For example, Wyoming. Wyoming doesn't have laws that could ban abortion if Roe v. Wade was overturned, but it also doesn't have any laws that provide additional protections. So what does that mean for Washington? The right for a woman to have an abortion will be secure in Washington, even if Roe v. Wade is overturned. In 1991, Washington voters enacted the Reproductive Privacy Act, codifying the holding of Roe v. Wade and prohibiting nearly all forms of government restriction on the right to choose safe and legal abortion. I'm happy to cite that RCW for you if you're interested later. Among other things, the RPA prohibits any abortion restriction prior to viability that is not medically necessary to protect the life or health of the person terminating their pregnancy. The RPA prohibits the state from interfering with the right to terminate a pregnancy prior to viability of the fetus or to protect the woman's life or health. Again, just additional RCW sites. Under the Act, any state regulation relating to abortion is valid only if the regulation is medically necessary, again, to protect the life or health of a woman, it is consistent with established medical practice, and is the least restrictive alternative available. The state shall not discriminate against the exercise of these rights in the regulation or provision of the benefits, facilities, services, or information. The Act actually provides better protections than available under Roe due to the KCV Planned Parenthood decision, which found that the restrictions could be made on the federal right to an abortion as long as there was not undue burden on a woman. The Act does more than legalize abortion on the state level. It includes an economic equality provision to ensure that women could access the procedures regardless of cost. This is the reason that Washington allocates state Medicaid funding for abortion, a rare deviation in a country where the federal Hyde Amendment restricts the use of public dollars for most abortion care. In January, this past January, Washington further expanded access to abortion through the legislature's passing of the Reproductive Parity Act. I don't know how many of you all followed what was happening on the state level this last session, which mandates the insurance companies that cover maternity care services also cover abortion services. In addition to statutory protections, Washington has implied protections embedded within the state constitution. An Attorney General opinion found protections can be found in Washington's Equal Rights Amendment. The Equal Rights Amendment Constitution, I won't give you the whole citing, states that equality of rights and responsibilities under the law shall not be denied or abridged on account of sex. The ERA provides greater protection against discrimination based on sex than the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution, because only women, the ERA absolutely prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex and is not subject to even the narrow exceptions permitted under traditional strict scrutiny. I don't know how many of you studied constitutional law, but strict scrutiny is the one that has the highest burden. Because only women can become pregnant or need abortion care, singling out abortion for stricter regulation than is imposed for others, more dangerous procedures like colonoscopies likely cannot survive the level of scrutiny that the ERA requires. Other state courts have adopted this approach, concluding that their Equal Rights Amendment protects reproductive rights, where a law singles out for less than favorable treatment a gender-linked condition that is unique to women, or where the state fails to comparably restrict men from accessing procedures unique to male anatomy. Yeah, I find that interesting. I found it interesting in the research, so. So here's the question posed to our office. Are there laws or Washington state constitutional issues that we activists, advocates need to be aware of so that you can lobby for enhanced or constitutional changes? So parts of the Reproductive Parity Act that would have expanded upon reproductive health protections for women didn't pass, like the portion about immigrant women having a right to receive comprehensive medical care. So right now in Washington, we're really focused on solidifying the idea that everyone has a right to reproductive access and health care. That's a gap we still need to fill. So the other question is about what impacts might occur in neighboring states that might prompt women in those states to need to travel here to Washington to secure a safe abortion. So the only state bordering Washington with restrictive laws on abortion is Idaho. In Idaho, abortions are illegal after viability, and there's a mandatory counseling session and 24-hour waiting period, and third trimester and partial birth abortions are only allowed if a woman's life is in danger. Reproductive health centers in Eastern Washington are seeing the biggest impact there of Idaho's restrictive laws, and they have. They've always had a steady stream of women coming from Idaho to receive the reproductive health care of their choice, but now the number of women traveling to Washington has increased, and so resources are getting stretched thin. That may impact the budget considerations going forward on filling this gap. So how can we all provide support to women in other states that are facing these issues? Our neighbors in Idaho, for instance. So far this year, the following 15 states have introduced what are called heartbeat bills that would ban abortions after 6 weeks. Georgia, Illinois, Florida, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Missouri, New York, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, Mississippi, and Ohio. I'm happy to provide a link after my remarks that'll take you to a legislative tracker, so it'll show all the bill numbers and whether the bills have passed in those states or not, so you can track those efforts. But advocates should really do a couple of things. These are the asks, the action items, if you will, to pay very close attention to what different states and the federal government are doing. So thank you all for letting me provide you an update on that, and I hope you stay following it. Map out organizing efforts across the country and find ways to support and share information about them to all of your networks. Those networks are really, really powerful. The ability to have a conversation with another person, regardless of all the shares on social media, I think we forget that, and you all being here tonight is just a really, really solid example of how talking to your neighbor and really supporting your community can go a long way. The most direct way to show support always is to donate to reproductive health organizations in states where these restrictive laws are currently in effect, because they are closing their doors. So I thank you for being here and sharing the first step with me. There are many shameful aspects to what's happening, but I'm really proud. A lot of people right now are figuring out what they're going to have on their plate for the legislative agenda. I know we are. And probably about the next month or so, those agendas will be coming out and people will start having conversations with stakeholders about what their priority bills are or budget asks are. So I say the sooner the better on that. The process really can be as simple as going on to ledge.wa.gov, finding out who not only are your representatives, but also who are on the fiscal committees in both the House and the Senate. So that would be the House Appropriations Committee, chaired by Representative Tim Ormsby, and that would be the Senate Ways and Means Committee, chaired by Senator Christine Rolfes. So I would say as many calls as you can apply to all of the legislators on there. I mean, even the Democratic friends need a little bit of support. If they're in support of the budget ask, why not say thank you, right? The question was if we have identified the healthcare providers in Eastern Washington that are serving patients coming over from Idaho to access these healthcare services. Is that correct?
Yeah, the towns, the areas.
Yeah, so I don't think that we have sought out that information specifically. We're retaining as much information and researching as much information as we can now, so that hopefully we can have them on the radar when we move forward on budget considerations, because they might be in districts that may not support the budget request. So, yeah, it's a huge area. Yeah. So that, I think, we're in the process of gathering that information, but we don't have it now.
The question is if there's HPV virus. I think you mean vaccine. There's lots of viruses, yeah. Yes, the answer is yes. We have HPV vaccine at both the school clinics.